Hey, hi, and hello, everyone. It's Susan, and welcome back to my comic book journey from 12 to 60, where I walk you through my history of collecting comic books and reading them and enjoying them and loving them. And now I'm in the process of figuring out how to get rid of them. I've been doing a lot of putting things on eBay. I think I have something like 30 items posted already. I've made 6 sales. I'm going to walk you through that. I have to package up one of the sales I made, which was Countdown. That was an interesting one, the Countdown to Final Crisis. And then today I'm going to work on posting a few new things, including the Great DC crossover event that started all the crossover events, Crisis on Infinite Earth. So let me just show you what I've been doing. Okay, so let me bring you up to speed with what's happening with my eBay inventory. I actually sold a couple of the Nightcrawler miniseries. I sold that as sort of one lot, 2 different miniseries. I also sold a mixed lot of 15 Rogue comics. That was pretty cool. I was really excited about that. I've got a few new items. I don't think I had up last time in here. Did I? Can't remember. Tiny brain. I did get up, as you know, not just the original first series of Hawkeye, but I also got up the subsequent issues of Hawkeye. So I did get those on. I sold the formerly known as JLA series, which was awesome, but I still have the Justice League featuring good old Booster and Guy, as I like to call them, the loser Justice League, the loser JLA. Still haven't moved the House of Mystery, which is okay because it's an awesome book and I can always dip into it. It's wonderful stories. It's about telling stories, and it brings in the sort of macabre. It's a really quirky book with extraordinary art. So if you are thinking about that, reach out if you have questions, ask me about it, and I'll try and tell you how amazing it is. So over here, this is the series. This is Countdown. I wrote it down as 1 through 51, but it was actually numbered. It came out from 51 to 50 to 49 to 48. The way the book actually issued was in a countdown format. So the final book in the series was actually this one, which is the Countdown Final Crisis that then launched into the Final Crisis miniseries. So this book sold, so I need to pull that out and package it today. That's top of my list. And then I am going to work on posting Infinite Crisis. Again, I'll talk about that a little bit while I do it. But I have extra copies of issues 1 and 2, and I'm really looking forward to posting that and telling you guys kind of like what my memories are of experiencing Infinite Crisis in real time. I'm trying to be real careful with how I package these things to ship them. I've watched probably half a dozen or so YouTube videos that kind of describe the sort of gold standard for shipping comic books, but most of those are for, if you're selling 1 or 2 or maybe, up to 10 or 12, and you use those fancy Gemini mailers, and I got a bunch of those, but, I think I have to be a little bit creative with these larger lots to make sure that, I'm not overcharging on shipping, but also making sure that things are really securely packed so that they come in the condition that the person expects. So the next thing that I'm going to put up is a series called Crisis on Infinite Earths. And this book, if you look over here, it's beautiful. That's issue number 1. This book was a 12-part maxi series by DC that came out, I want to say, in 1986, somewhere in there. So I would have been in college, and I had been collecting comics by then very much, for a very long time. Was really into it, had been a huge fan of like the new Teen Titans, and while I had at that point sort of expanded my tastes into the Marvel universe, I was still very much kind of a DC gal. And this was huge. Like, not just for me, huge, but for comics, huge. And the reason that Crisis on Infinite Earths is huge is because it was sort of the real big, the first really big sort of universe wide event that DC did, where you had all of these characters from all of these different storylines and different Earths coming together in an event that literally changed the continuity going forward. And the way that it kind of came about was that, over the decades of telling stories and having, Justice League stories and Superman stories, and you would have Justice Society stories, and you would have stories set back in World War II, and then you would have these crossover events where the, Justice League would meet the Justice Society and they would band together to do something, and or you would have, the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott, meet Hal Jordan, or you'd have, multiple Wonder Womans meet. And so basically what had developed over time was this idea that there were multiple Earths, right? There was Earth Prime, there was Earth 1, there was Earth 2, it was like Earth X and Earth S. There were a number of different, Earths. And so they kind of created this idea that there were an infinite number of universes, an infinite number of Earths. And what they decided to do with this amazing miniseries, maxi series, was to completely change that. And so this whole storyline is about how these there's two sort of all-powerful kind of beings, the Monitor and the Anti-Monitor, who sort of represent, matter and antimatter, sort of good and bad, that sort of thing. And the Anti-Monitor is basically going through and destroying all of these different Earths. And so suddenly, the heroes and all these different Earths find out about it, and they have to figure out how to stop the Anti-Monitor from destroying all Earths, from destroying all life. And it's oh my gosh, it was such a good series. It was such a good series. And it was devastating in many ways because it really did shake up some of the fan favorites in terms of characters and groups and storylines. It really shook them up quite a bit. We meet an Alexander Luthor who's kind of a hero. We see, an older sort of gray-haired Superman. And it was pretty amazing. And there are some pretty amazing, choices that they made that I thought were pretty stunning. And I'll show you when I get there. But it was amazing. And one of the things that was really wonderful about it to me was that it was by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. And they were at the time, and probably still are in my heart, two of my favorite creators, and in particular when they worked together. And Marv Wolfman was not a writer that I had been that familiar with. He'd done a lot of work in sort of some of the horror titles over on Marvel. I think he had done, what was that one, Werewolf After Night or something like that. And it was really funny because a Wolfman was writing the werewolf book or something like that. But he did a lot of that, sort of Blade. I think he worked on Blade at Marvel, but I wasn't really that familiar with him until the new Teen Titans came out at DC. And that was one of my favorite books for a very long time. And the artist on that was a fellow by the name of George Perez, who became one of my favorite artists. And, he had a kind of a very detailed, realistic style. And you could tell in his art, and you could tell in Marv's writing as well, that he really loved these characters. Like, he loved these worlds, they loved these stories. And when you look at Perez's art, and it's so detailed, and he's so good, I'm going to show you some close-ups in a minute because it's so amazing. But he was so great with expression, and he was so great with distinguishing the different characters and just the way that he had them sort of in motion. And I love his art. He's done a lot of things that I've loved over the years. He did a run on Wonder Woman that I loved. He did an Avengers JLA crossover that I thought was terrific. And so he's awesome. If you ever are able to see any George Perez art or books, please pick them up, look at them. They're wonderful. And the other thing I would say is that George Perez, I never had the chance to meet Marv Wolfman, but may he rest in peace. George Perez was a wonderful person. He was just a lovely, lovely man. You'd go to comic conventions, and when I first started, presenting at, tabling at comic conventions, we'd sit there in Artist Alley, and some of the bigger names would have tables kind of off in the corners. And one time, I had the good fortune of tabling near George Perez, and he was always wearing these like really brightly colored Hawaiian shirts and a smile. He was just the warmest, nicest, kindest man, and he always had this huge line of fans waiting to like get things signed and whatnot. And because I was tabling and with my book and things like that, I didn't really have a chance to stand in line and do that whole thing. But he was always smiling, and he would make sure that his line never interfered with your table, which that's just a good guy thing to do, right? That to me was such a good guy thing to do, because he knew that folks like me that are just starting were trying to promote our own books, and he would just make sure that his fans would just be respectful of that. He was always there with a smile and a hello and an encouraging word as he would walk to and from his table. And I remember at some point, I was kind of stepped away from my table to go around him to go to the ladies' room, and I just caught his eye for a second, and I just said, "Just want to thank you, George. Just thank you." And he just looked at me with a just wonderful smile, and he's like, "Thank you." I mean, he was and he meant it. I don't know. Okay, he was a really cool guy. Okay, so I hope you can see that all right. This is the cover of issue number 1. It's in pretty good condition. You can see, I'm trying to get a little bit of light on there. You can see there's a little bit of, I don't know what you call that, creasing on the spine of this one. So that's a bummer, but the staples are looking good. The spine looks good. But what's cool about this is it's a wraparound cover by our beloved George Perez. I mean, just look at the detail on Firestorm's face there. This is a new character. You'll get to know him if you read the book, called Pariah. This is, I want to say, Earth 2 Superman. And you see, that's Dawnstar from the Legion of Superheroes. This is, I think Ted Kord, if I'm not mistaken, was a new character. Of course, he became really important in Justice League history. But I think he was a new character in this. Cyborg, of course, from New Teen Titans. And then you flip it over and you see, Geoforce. I believe this character's name was called Harbinger. She was a new character for this. The John Stewart Green Lantern. And you just see, this cover really shows the sort of disruption and chaos that is created in this book. And this is, I think, I'm really excited. I think this is in pretty good shape. I'm sorry, I was wrong about what year it was. It was 1984, not 1986. So I would have just started college. I was still in college. But you think about, look at that expression on Superman's face, and I just love Perez so much. I can't even begin to tell you how much I loved him. And so much of the story is really getting into the various characters and their relationships with each other, and that becomes such a pivotal part of why the book itself. So it's not just action, action, action. It's definitely, really getting into and honoring, I think, our relationship with these characters. So I thought that was really cool. So this is, issue number 2. I have 2 copies of this, 2 copies of issue number 1. Pretty psyched about that. So I'll be selling those separately, but I will be selling this, I think, as a set. And look at that amazing, I just love the layout of that particular cover. And the thing that George Perez was famous for was the amount of information and characters he could get onto a cover. I mean, just look, this section, this section, this section, this section. I mean, they're all telling a different part of the story, which I think is amazing. Right. And then, okay, there's a big moment in issue number 4 when one of the big all-powerful characters, the Monitor, gets killed. And we think, oh, that's terrible. That's awful. What are we going to do? What's happening with the heroes? It's another great cover. I mean, look at I remember just sitting here and trying to go through and identify who are all these characters. Oh, that's the other thing I forgot to mention is the Anti-Monitor. Of course, it's not just all the heroes from all the Earths that get involved. It's all the villains too, right? And you see you've got this very subtle line up here kind of separating the different Earths and the different, groups of people. And I would just sit here and like go through like, who are all of these, characters? Do I know them all? How do I know them? And so you can kind of take a look at that, and there's Plaz, remember him? And just kind of go through and see who you knew as well. And then, this was kind of a cool cover. And then, you think to yourself, they're not going to change anything. They're not going to do anything too drastic, right? And I remember this is a double-sized shocker. This is issue number 7. I mean, what an amazing cover. And I remember getting this and thinking, well, what the heck's going to happen in this book? Because we all know nothing really bad ever happens to superheroes, right? This was sort of before really, really bad things happened to superheroes. Yeah, all I'm going to say is don't get too attached to that Supergirl. Oh man, that broke my freaking heart. Just broke my heart. And you think, okay, fine. One big casualty. It's meaningful, it's important, but that's going to be it, right? No. Nope. This is just, I mean, this was even more devastating to me than the Supergirl, because I was a huge Flash fan. And this issue, number 8, I was like, I don't know, do I even want to keep reading? I'm not sure. Then we have this great cover. Of course I did keep reading, which is awesome because it has all the detail. Look at all those villains. Those are just all the villains you've ever wanted to have in your entire life. They're all right here. Who was the big one in this? I think it was like Psycho Pirate or something like that. Was a really important villain in this. Then we've got, and I was never a big Spectre fan. I didn't really have a lot of background with the Spectre, but he ended up being a very important character in this. And then from that, in all of these sort of big event crossovers that DC would do, that's kind of when the Spectre would sort of come into play. And I think, again, just look at the detail in this cover and like just the number of characters that he gets in there and just like the action in it. To me, I just love, you may have or may not have noticed, but I'm a huge, huge fan. Oh my God. Dick Grayson and the Huntress. I think they're from Earth 2. Love them. See, here we have all the multiple Wonder Women and their family. The 2 Supermen. We've got a Flash, Jay Garrick. We've got Wally West. And then, of course, we have the big conclusion. And the conclusion was, I thought, pretty brave, because what they did, and spoiler alert, was they essentially merged the worlds into, I should just put this down here like this. They merged all of the Earths into one Earth. So suddenly DC was starting with like all their storylines, all their characters, everything took place in one Earth, in one timeline. And the heartbreaking part was you had some superheroes from Earth 2 who were on that surviving Earth. So it was like various heroes from various places ended up on the surviving Earth, and they all remembered their old lives and their old Earth. So it was kind of heartbreaking from then. And of course, as we know, it didn't stay that way. DC's storylines grew and grew and grew, and they ended up splintering off into other Earths as well, which kind of makes sense, and I kind of like it that way. But this was really the pivotal, this is how you do a crossover event. This is how you do a continuity changing event. this is the gold standard. And I hope that you guys find it somewhere. You can find it here. You can find it on my eBay. The link for that will be in the description below. But if you haven't read Crisis on Infinite Earths, I just encourage you to do it because it is totally worth your time. All right. I'll see you guys next week. Take care.